I'm Cynthia Jackson, a very proud graduate of Spelman College, class of 1981, the Centennial class. I also have the privilege and honor of serving on the Spelman College Board of Trustees. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this very important and timely, courageous conversation, Black in the C-Suite. Thank you for choosing to spend your time with us today for this first event of Spelman's new virtual series, powered by UPS. UPS, thank you so much for your sponsorship. Spelman College is a powerhouse institution. We have more than 2,200 students and 20,000 alumni who are equipped, encouraged, and currently making positive change in the world, like our sister Stacey Abrams, who's doing a great job at Fair Fight. We are thrilled to host this conversation between the 10th president of Spelman College, Dr. Mary Schmidt Campbell, and Robin Washington, a former executive vice president and chief financial officer of Gilead Sciences Incorporated, a research-based biopharmaceutical company. Robin is currently on the board at Alphabet Incorporated, Honeywell International Incorporated, and Salesforce. She is a powerful sister. The goal of courageous conversation is to inform and to inspire. Because of the critical times that we are in, it's important for Spelman to be at the forefront, to provide opportunities for connection, engagement, understanding, education, but most important, Black women empowerment. Throughout the conversation, please submit your questions in chat. We will answer as many questions as possible during the Q&A segment after the discussion. So now, without further ado, please join me in a virtual applause as we welcome two extraordinary women, the president of Spelman College, Dr. Mary Schmidt Campbell, and Robin Washington.
Thank you so much, CJ. One of the great things about being at Spelman College is my board of trustees. I have the best board in the entire world, and CJ is one of the most dynamic members of that board. So thank you for being with us today, CJ.
Thank you.
So how's everybody doing? Let me know by telling me in the chat how you're doing. Just enter it in. Tell me how you're feeling today. Well, it's great to hear from all of you. We're doing well here at Spelman College. You know, US News and World Reports just issued its 2021 rankings. And I'm so pleased to report that Spelman moved up to number 54 as a liberal arts college nationally. And it is still the number one HBCU for 14 years straight. I am very pleased to report that our faculty have us ranked in the top 20 nationally for undergraduate teaching, and Spelman College is number 4 in the country for social mobility. So we're very proud of all that Spelman College has achieved, even though we are living in very challenging times. I am really pleased this afternoon to be able to welcome Robin Washington, and I've been looking forward to this discussion. How are you doing today, Robin?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for inviting me, Mary, to this, and congratulations on the ranking. That's awesome.
Thank you.
You have a great board of trustees. I know several of them, wonderful women, and I consider friends and mentors and people that I look up to as well.
Yes, they're terrific. They really are. Now, you spend quite a bit of time in what's called the C-suite. Let's open this up by having you share with us, what do we mean when we talk about the C-suite?
Yeah, let's demystify those terms, right, and acronyms. I mean, the C-suite, technically it means someone with a C or a chief in their title, but what it really means, it's the executive suite of the company or the executive leaders of the company that ultimately make decisions, represent the shareholders, interact directly with the board, and really manage the day-to-day operations of the company. So there's the CEO, there's a CFO, there could be a chief operating officer, and you also see head of, there's the chief legal officer, a new term is chief CHRO, the chief head of people operations or HR. So it's the chief word that makes it the C-suite.
So the buck stops here with
Buck stops
those of you who have that C in front of your title.
Yes, absolutely.
So now, for the past 11 years, you've been at Gilead Sciences, Inc. Tell us a little bit about what type of company that is.
Sure. So CJ described it as it is a biopharmaceutical company. If you think about Merck, J&J, Regeneron, or whatever. But I want to tell you a little bit more about what we do, and still do, even though I'm not there anymore, I retired. But basically, we develop or research, develop, and then manufacture drugs or medicines, life-saving medicines for patients. So some that you may be familiar with, if you've ever got a really, really bad flu or influenza, you've taken Tamiflu.
Oh, yeah.
That was developed at Gilead. We're known for HIV and AIDS medications. And in addition to just discovering the drug, we really made the regimen for people living with HIV very simple. So it's one pill once a day. And we also more recently introduced a medicine that's for preventative. So for people that may engage in activities that would expose them for HIV. If you all seen those commercials, Step Up, Prep Up, Descovy for PrEP, that's Gilead. So HIV. One of the exciting times when I was at Gilead was when we acquired a company, combined it with some of our molecules, and helped cure hepatitis C.
Wow.
So there are millions of people now that have been cured around the world with a single pill that they take. Was actually, it was a single pill, but they take it for 6 to 12 weeks and it was cured. So it was fascinating to be able to do that and be involved in that. And most recently, if you think about COVID-19, there was a lot of excitement, and it continues to be a drug used for people that have it. It's not a vaccine, but remdesivir. That's also a Gilead product that's really working on the front line to help healthcare workers with COVID. And we just recently announced a big acquisition, my predecessor and the team, we started to move more into oncology. So we're doing a lot of things there. I think what really sets the company apart for me, and one of the draws to me of joining the company, was what's called our Access Program. And with our Access Program, we work with over 110 countries around the world to provide, via generic manufacturers, access to the formulations of our medications to get it in the hands of people that wouldn't be able to pay for our drugs. So a lot of countries in Africa, Southern Asia, and other parts of the world are able to benefit from our medicines. And that giving back, mission-oriented part of the company was always something that was very appealing to me.
So listening to you talk, I'm thinking that if I'm a STEM student at Spelman College, and I want to get into a laboratory and do some research that's going to have a social justice impact, I might come to a company like Gilead, right?
Absolutely. Even for me, being a finance person, when I started researching the company and thinking about HIV and AIDS at the time, Black women like me were the people that were attracting the disease the most. So absolutely, if you're interested in science, biology, we have a lot of people that are out in the field, a lot right in Atlanta there, that work with that population. Because right now, HIV's moved from a gay white male disease to a disease really that's impacted more the impoverished. And the South is a huge area where you see a higher prevalence of the disease. So absolutely, there are a lot of ways to be in corporate America, but really focused on doing things that support our communities. And that was one of the things that attracted me.
There at Gilead for 11 years, you served as the Chief Financial Officer. So what does that mean? What was your job?
So in a nutshell, my role as the Chief Financial Officer was really to be responsible for the financial stewardship of the company. And that means a lot of different things. But I mean, basically, whether it was financial reporting, you're thinking about how you budget, plan, do the financial outlooks, managing our cash, raising our debt. I was the primary liaison for the company with Wall Street, where I spent a lot of time talking with our investors. I'd also say that really the role of a good CFO is very strategic. You're really the right hand business partner to the CEO and the rest of the management team. You sit in the board meetings, you present financials, you talk about the pros and cons, or how do we allocate our capital or our investments across all the things that we want to do in the case of Gilead, developing drugs. What can we do and what can't we do? When do we need to acquire? So you're really involved in all aspects of those things. I also was responsible for information technology. So all the systems we use, how we collect data, how we drive systems to be efficient, and then all the building and facilities around the world where we are acquiring facilities or leasing facilities to support our 12,000 plus employees. Right now, a lot of CFOs and general counsels are involved in getting employees back to work or employee safety and security, given any type of natural disaster. And in this case, what do you do around ensuring that people don't get infected in the environments? And even now supporting the rollout. I remember one of the last things I did before I left was do an entire rollout of a Zoom infrastructure, which is very critical right now to companies having to operate remotely. So it's a gamut of things. It's a very strategic role that you play, much more than just financial reporting and the numbers.
Sure. I can imagine just even deciding what drugs you're going to research and what drugs you're going to bring to market and how is also part of the CFO's job along with the CEO.
That's exactly right. And then you're also out representing the company. I mean, one of the things that I think that's important for all the C-suites, but also for the financial person, is understanding the business. So I'd ride with reps, I'd see patients, I'd go to doctors' offices, I attended scientific conferences. All those things really get you close to the business, because if you're going to be a good CFO, you really need to understand the intricacies of the company. So I got the opportunity to travel the world and spend a lot of time, not only with our employees, but with the communities that we support.
Now, when you were an undergraduate, I bet all of that wasn't known to you when you were sitting in class and starting out in your first year. So what attracted you to your major when you came in as an undergraduate?
So it's an interesting story, Mary, because I have to tell you, I was an English major, determined I was going to go to law school. My favorite subjects were history and English. And I had gotten a chance to be judge for a day in a civics group in high school. So I had decided I'm going to be a Supreme Court judge. So that was my journey. And
we're always ambitious.
Always ambitious, but never, I didn't even enjoy math, which is a story. I did it, but the whole abstract nature of it wasn't my thing. And I have to say, which is to us, I listened to my parents who were, that's great. You want to be a lawyer. My dad was a businessman and a fireman. He goes, but you might want to just get some financial expertise and everything and get a degree in business. You can always be a lawyer, but maybe major in accounting. So I got some internships in the summers when I was growing up in Detroit, and I got exposure to his CPA, and I did some other things with his real estate business that just kind of got me oriented around business. Mm-hmm. But to your question, getting to college, so to apply to business school at the time at U of M, you had to take accounting classes. So I started taking accounting my sophomore year. And my first accounting class, I got a C. And I was devastated and told my dad, this is not, it was one of my, yeah, exactly. I wanted to give up. And I think it was one of those first pivotal moments in your life where I just had to roll up my sleeve, spend hours and hours in the library, really trying to understand accounting. And it was life-changing for me, obviously, but more importantly, I think it helped me understand the importance of not giving up, drilling in. And like I said, I think it was never easy, but it was satisfying when I got through it and was able to improve my grades and the opportunities afforded to me. So I always thought, though, I was going to go back to law school and become a lawyer. It just never happened.
So you graduated an undergraduate degree from the University of again in business administration, and then you went to Pepperdine for your MBA.
Um,
What was your first
yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead.
What was your first professional job coming out of college?
So I actually had about 10 years from when I graduated till I got my MBA. My first job was working for Deloitte and Touche now as an auditor. So I got out, I worked as an auditor and got to support a lot of different companies and took the CPA exam. So I did become a CPA, which is what my dad's focus was for me, being able to read a financial statement. And then I kind of meandered around. I started a master's in taxation and just realized this wasn't really me. I worked at the Federal Reserve Bank, putting in place accounting systems. Didn't really enjoy that. And then ultimately joined a company that was based in Silicon Valley, but I started in Detroit, Michigan, where I grew up. And it was called Tandem Computers. It's now part of HP. But I got to drive around with the reps, and I really figured out that I like tinkering. I like understanding businesses. They brought me out to California. I didn't know anyone. They gave me an apartment and a car for a year and said, "Would you be willing to try it?" You know, and beautiful place. You know, murky and gray and cold in Detroit. It was in November. Sign me up. So I went and. I was there for 9 years, and they had this great program where they allowed you to rotate into a lot of different roles every couple of years. And I realized that a lot of my peers all had MBAs and they didn't care about my CPA. So I decided I needed to get that. I resigned to apply to MBA in law school, and they said, no, we'll send you to get your MBA. So I got an executive MBA while I was working. Which was a wonderful opportunity because I got sponsored and had the opportunity to work with our CEO at the time as part of my MBA program.
That sounds great. So I noticed as I was looking at your bio, you talked about tinkering. I noticed that there are a number of IT companies or tech companies that you history leading up to Gilead. So how did you get sort of pulled into those types of companies?
Well, as I said, like Tandem was one of the early stage, the large disk drives, like kind of pre-client server computing companies. And again, I was here in Northern California, which was the Silicon Valley, known for great technology companies. And I actually had a colleague that left Tandem and went to PeopleSoft. Which this was great because it was selling enterprise financial software and HR software. And the same founders now founded Workday, which some of you may have heard of now. But it was really nice because back to tinkering, it was software, but it was for the purposes of financials. So as an accountant and a CPA, we were selling a product that I used. So I got a chance to use it. They sent me overseas for a couple of years. I got a chance to implement it. I talked to our customers about it. So it was just an industry that I was drawn to. We were acquired. My first CFO role was at another technology company, which was analytics. And again, it was a product that I used. And for me, what was interesting about the financial software is that because I used the software, I was really able to engage and understand the business broader and work directly with the engineers, with our customers, et cetera. So it was a really interesting time of growth out here in Silicon Valley, being in the techie world. And I loved it. And I loved it because people were constantly reinventing themselves. There were a lot of startups. I was here during the whole .com boom, et cetera. But it was very fascinating and different and ever evolving, which I really enjoy.
So when you read the bio of someone who's been successful as you are, it looks like a straight line that first you did this and then you did this and voila. Along the way, were there any missteps or were there any, setbacks? Can you tell us about those if there were?
Yeah, I mean, there were a ton. And I always describe to people that a career is a journey. And it's one of those journeys where as much as you have a laid out map, it kind of never works out that way. And what I learned to do, and I'll tell you about some of those missteps, is think of missteps as really just a part of the journey. And for instance, I remember being at Tandem. I had worked with my manager. He was based in Germany. I was based in the Netherlands. He came back. I came back. And I really enjoyed working with him. I thought he was a great sponsor and everything. I was very loyal. And when I got back, I assumed that I would get promoted and work for a role working for him. And a new CFO came in and it didn't happen. He put someone else in the role. And I was kind of very, very pissed off, for lack of better words. I have to be honest. And, I felt very betrayed and everything, but it led me to, okay, what did I do wrong? And I didn't really do anything wrong. It just wasn't, but it led me to other opportunities that I was able to develop different skills. I remember switching industries and going to Gilead and really feeling I was ready to go out on the road by myself. Now, mind you, not only math, but science wasn't my thing either. And now I'm working for a biotech company. And the first investor conference that I did totally bombed. Didn't get it, didn't figure it out. I mean, I was embarrassed. It was embarrassing, right? And, the company stuck by me, but what it was one of those inflection moments, that I was able to, that really caused me to really drill in, as I said, and really learn the business. Since I wasn't a science, I had to find my voice and be able to talk about what we did in a way that I was comfortable with, as opposed to trying to memorize or mimic what someone else did. So learning about authenticity,
Right.
Again, drilling in, those are all things that I learned. So I like to call missteps as the best opportunities for learning.
So on your journey, who did you turn to? You're a Black woman in fields and industries that are overwhelmingly male, overwhelmingly white. So where did you seek and where did you find mentorship, guidance, sponsorship?
Yeah. So I would say early on, again, I was fortunate and blessed to have a very supportive family. And, we talk about mentors. I think at the beginning of my career, to be honest, Mary, I probably had more sponsors. And I just, I was always taught to just work really hard, do your best, get to know people, to speak up. And these were folks, sponsors are people that really could be supporting you or looking at your work. And you're not necessarily a mentor. They're not one that puts their arms around you or you go to lunch with, but they're people in higher positions that can direct and make ways for you. And I remember I had done a piece of work and there was a VP at Tandem that he came up to me when I moved out and said, I really like some of the things you do. And we had some problems and he put me on the assignment. He was a terse guy from the South, but he was like, I really need you to figure this out. And I did. He was gruff. He never thanked me, but I know to this day that because of that work, he helped navigate me to get increasingly higher roles. So the other thing that I found is, I will say there was one, still didn't totally know everything that a CFO did. And I was involved in the National Association of Black Accountants when I moved out to California. And I read about this woman CFO at Science Nova, which was a biotech company, by the way, which was really before I ever thought about biotech. And her name was Virginia Walker. And I was determined to meet her. So I asked her to speak at NABA. And because of that, I had to go over and kind of give her a down brief on, what we were doing. And I went by to her office one evening and she sat down and talked to me for an hour and a half.
Wow.
And it just changed my life. She spoke. And it wasn't that we stayed in touch. I actually reconnected with her about 2 years ago because I had to tell her that I had become a Fortune 500 biotech CFO, unbeknownst, to her. So we do stay in touch now. But I think the other key thing that I always tell people is having your personal board of directors. And to me, those are people that know you, are going to support you, tell you when you're wrong and off base. And I have to say, I've been blessed to have a set of friends and a set of mentors. One is I've had my best friend since 6th grade that still lives in Detroit. So we leave on other part, but we still connect. And when I'm off base, she'll tell me, that doesn't even sound like you. She's known me that long. It's my kids. But then I've also had work colleagues. And I have to also say, I have mentors, most that don't look like me. There are several white males that have been the white male that gave me my first CFO role was a wonderful ally and mentor for me. So I think it's being open enough to find people that are supportive of you, that recognize your skill sets, are going to give you honest feedback.
So it's also on you to recognize when people are extending themselves and to be open to what advice and guidance that they have to give, no matter what color they are.
That's exactly right. And just to be open to the possibility. I learned early on that I can sit in the corner and not say anything, but if an executive's going to be in the room or it's someone I want to know, they don't always say yes, but most do. I'd go up and shake the person's hand and say, I'd love to spend 5 to 10 minutes getting to know what you do or introducing yourself. And I think learning how to put yourself out there is really, really important.
So Robin, as your career is developing, as you're moving up, you're also building a family. You're married, you have children. Yes. So tell us how you manage that.
I managed it. It's, I have to say, and I tell all women, who you pick as your partner is really, really important. And it's not only loving them unconditionally, but you have to find someone that loves you unconditionally. I think you also have to find someone that loves you unconventionally. That's just the reality of it. Because
unconventionally,
right?
Tell me about that.
Typical family. By that I mean, that's going to roll with the punches. It's going to realize that sometimes you have to travel. That sometimes, some of the things that you do. Have to take first rung. And I think for Black women in the Black community, that can sometimes be difficult. I'm married to a wonderful Black man, 25 years just earlier this month. And he's made sacrifices to support my career. And we've done things together. When I moved overseas, we were newly married. He moved over with me, but it's the family unit that matters. And so I think that's really important. I also think having a family and children, I've got an 18 and 21-year-old now, it really gives you a sense of empathy. I think it made me a better manager because you learn how to juggle. You're raising these little people who don't necessarily do everything you do or the way you do it. And they come here the way they are. You can shape and mold, but they're individuals. And I think for me, it's been very insightful as you manage larger and larger groups of people to just recognize people are different. And, running a family as well as a role, having a key role, there's up and downs, there's balance. I used to call it the garage door syndrome. It's like I pull up and I can talk outside, but once I move in, particularly when the kids are small, you got to just put down that phone. So you got to learn how to balance. And you are out of balance. It's the whole work-life balance thing is tough for all of us. So I learned how to outsource some things, but I also decided early on in my career, I will never miss a parent-teacher conference. Where I can, I will involve my kids in my work and what we do. And we will, take advantage of some of the benefits, if it's travel or whatever, to engage them in the process. So there are moments when work comes first, but there are also moments when families first. And so I set clear rules. And I think by doing that, particularly as I moved up as a leader, I tried to create a culture in my group that also supported that for men and women. It had reached a point where a man could tell me, I know we need to do this, but I need to pick up my daughter. And I always felt really good about that. I had my treasurer swam from 5 to 6. So I kind of knew, don't bother. But we created a culture where we could all be ourselves. We could share what we're going through. I have an older mom now. And so, that transition of becoming a caregiver, it's this is part of life. And I think it makes you a better leader to experience these aspects of life.
That's a great way to look at it. And when you set boundaries for yourself and people know what those boundaries are, then everybody has the right expectations. Yeah.
Don't get there day one. I think I got more and more comfortable. And like I said, I think it was my role, even before the C-suite, but definitely in the C-suite, to call it out. One of the things I talk about in the boardroom a lot now is we talk about improved productivity, but there are a lot of people really struggling right now with
Yes.
distance learning and all these things. And part of your role is to have that empathy and bring that to the table where people around you may not have those experiences.
Yes, we certainly feel you because we know that our students are challenged, our faculty, our workforce here at Spelman. So we understand that you have to have that empathy and compassion for the
Yes,
people who are around you. Now
absolutely.
you have retired from Gilead, but you haven't left the corporate world.
No.
And you serve as a director of several very exciting companies, Alphabet, which is the parent company for Google, Honeywell, and of course, Salesforce. So tell us, what is the distinction between your being a director and being in the C-suite?
Sure. Yeah, so being an independent director of a publicly traded company is, you have a fiduciary responsibility, for oversight of the company. You have two primary responsibilities, and that is the hiring and firing of the CFO and I'm sorry, CEO, and
Mhm.
succession planning, and strategy. So you're there to be independent. You are not management. But you're there to ensure a couple things: that the oversight and the direction that management is taking the company makes sense. That doesn't mean it's always right. It's just that it's vetted, it's thought about. You're there to ask questions. You're there to bring your experience collegially to a group of other, I would say, not like minded, but different individuals that come together to provide that necessary oversight. So, whether it's your financial background, your industry background, your policy capabilities, or whatever that. Great boards bring a lot of diverse skill sets, diversity of thought, more and more so, and importantly so, diversity of gender and race, et cetera, to the table to really help evolve and shape the future direction. And you have accountability to the shareholders of those companies. But you're also there to ensure and help management be successful. These are not easy jobs. And a lot of times, even at the C-suite, you're trying to drive strategy, but or you're also trying to drive the day to day. So the role of the board is sometimes to help the company step back or maybe see things from a way that they haven't thought about it. You spend a lot of time reading not only about the company, but the industry. What are they doing, and benchmarking some of the things that the company are doing relative to how the industry performance is going.
So I have a number of questions that have come from the audience, and I want to get to those. But I read something very interesting written by Mark Benioff, who is, of course, the CEO of Salesforce. And he made the distinction between stakeholders and shareholders. And he
Yes.
says corporations have to be concerned not only with their shareholders, who of course have bought shares in the company and want
Yes.
to make a profit,
Yes.
but they have to care about the welfare of the stakeholders, the people who are going to benefit from the product, the service, the research that a company does. Can you
Mm-hmm.
talk a little bit about that stakeholder versus shareholder?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think Mark's a real trailblazer in this regard, Mary. Even the Business Roundtable talks about the broader purpose of corporations. So, what he's referring to, like you said, there are the people that have a financial interest in the company, but our stakeholders are broader than that. There are customers out there who trust us with their data. There are employees. I've seen Mark take stands in, Indiana, when the vice president was the former governor of Indiana, and there were some rules being put in place that were offensive to gay and bisexual employees, and he took a stand there. Gender equality. He's taken a stand there. Pay equity for women. We looked at the ranks of all of staff and ensured that women are paid the same. The environment is a stakeholder. Climate change, right? So I think it's realizing that a corporation is an ecosystem, and if you can influence and if you do the right thing for all stakeholders, you'll be successful, but society will be successful as well. And in this time of unrest and social injustice, there's more and more focus of all the roles and influence that not only board directors or C-suites, but the companies and the employees can play in making a difference. And I think that's what Mark talks about there. And again, I think he was a real trailblazer in further defining that concept going forward.
Yeah. I'm going to turn now to some of the questions that have come in. They're piling up. Our provost has asked us to ask you to talk a little bit more about the importance of authenticity. What does that mean? And how do you sort of check yourself to kind of make sure that you are being authentic?
Yeah, it's I would say, like everyone, thinking about when I was in college or getting my MBA to evolving to a C-suite executive. I remember in my executive MBA program, and even you'd be in a room and I'd have a thought, but I always thought maybe someone else knew more than I did or better. And so when I'd raise my hand or when I get called on, I kind of mumble or be very nervous. And he used to tell me, he goes, Robin, you have great ideas and thoughts. Why are you mumbling? Speak up, use your voice, right? So it's a little different in authenticity, but it really taught me the importance of confidence in yourself and knowing that your approach, your opinion, your voice matters. And I think moving to the C-suite, back to, as you said, being a parent and being a mom, I learned more and more of the more you can bring yourself to work, the more you can create an environment where you can truly be you, and I'm a Black woman, and it's just the better you're going to succeed because you're not trying to be someone else. I told you about that example of failing where the predecessor before me was a PhD biological scientist, right? So when he talked about things that I'm not, I told you I was an English, want to be math major, right? But I had to learn how do I shape and frame my discussion about a topic such that it's comfortable for me. So I think being authentic is finding a way that you can bring your true self to bear. Now, I will also say that professionalism matters. And then I will also say that, part of, particularly if you're going to be in a corporate environment or anything, is you have to show up and be willing to work and adapt to cultural norms. But it becomes important to find environments where you can be authentic and professional. I think both of those matter. And it's finding that balance. And as you continue to move up and gain that influence, you can make a difference. You can make a change. You can share. I've spent so much time these last several months sharing my experiences being a Black woman in corporate America with other CEOs, board members, et cetera, and having real conversations about things that they had no idea about. And I do think those dynamics are getting better. But it's tough, but it's just like everything else. I think you evolve at getting comfortable and knowing how to challenge things and share experience and being vulnerable. I think you do have to be vulnerable.
So I have a very interesting question here. And it says that when you did have a mishap or a misstep, how do you forgive yourself for the embarrassment? We all make mistakes, we fall down and we feel really embarrassed. How do you get over that emotionally? I think that's a terrific question.
I agree. And, I think I have to learn, and I hate this about myself now, is I am such a perfectionist. So I'm really hard on myself. And then I realize more and more, to your point, no one's perfect. You're going to make mistakes. The best thing you can do is learn from your mistakes, brush it off, and move on, right? Because I think sometimes we can be our own worst enemies, that we're our it's in our head that we're not good enough. It's in our head that it's in our head that because we're Black, we don't deserve to be at the table. And, is it harder? Yes. But I remember one of the things that my parents told me very early on is that you can do anything you want to do if you're willing to work hard enough. Now, that didn't mean you were always going to win or that you were always going to get to do everything that you wanted to do. And not necessarily that even though you worked hard, you didn't get it. But it was one of those things that turned that negativity into power, that I was in control of my success and my environment. And I've had to make decisions about environments that maybe don't fit me.
Mm-hmm.
I've said no to roles that may not be the best fit for me, whether it's my gut or my intuition or the way I was approached. But it was that power I felt within myself that I owned the choice. I owned the decision of whether I succeeded or failed. And I didn't hand over that power to someone else.
Robin, you mentioned that at a certain point in your career, you went abroad. What did you learn through that experience of leaving the country and going someplace else and being in a completely different environment? Language is everything is different. What did that reveal to you?
So two things. I think one, it was uncomfortable. Fortunately, I was married 9 months before, so I was with my. I apologize, my computer does this sometimes. Sorry about that. But I think what it was really starting to realize different perspectives and views of the world. So I lived in Germany for 3 months by myself. Then my husband joined me and we lived in the Netherlands. And it was interesting in being in Europe. I mean, if you think about race, it was nationality first, not race. That was different. It was being in an environment with this history, really embedded history that everyone understood and knew. So, the German-Dutch relationships, right? The French and the UK. There were just these war and religion, right? These really these long-said beliefs and histories, but also I think living in that environment without the sense of time, the ability to enjoy family, to step back. So I think immersing yourself in different cultures. And I will say we've traveled the world with our kids, but it's nothing like living in that environment. It's different, where you kind of become a part of that ecosystem and you start to really understand and realize how evolved the world is and different perspectives. And so I think being a leader, particularly with a global company, putting yourself outside of your comfort zone in a different environment, as I said earlier, it gives you an empathy and a different experience that allows you to think about leadership.
So one of the characteristics of a Spelman education is study abroad. And at our commencement a year or so ago, 3/4 of the graduates had studied abroad. And I mean all over the world, for exactly the reasons that you're saying. We think that fundamental to being educated is to understand that these cultural differences are real and that you can bridge them.
Very real, very real. Learn a language, experience the world as much as you can, because it opens up your eyes to environments that you would have never fathomed. And I always tell people, get comfortable being uncomfortable. Put yourself outside of your comfort zone as much as you can, because it really does. It opens up your eyes to the world. I mean, just enjoying the art, understanding the history. And, you can read about history, but seeing history, experiencing history, trying different foods, just really being open and receptive. And I even, particularly now, I'm really in favor of these moments of times, either you're graduating or, you're gapping. Take these times to find something totally different and explore who you are. There's so much opportunity to do that. We've spent time in Africa, and I remember opening up a business unit in South Africa and getting to go to Johannesburg and, some of the places. This was right after apartheid in the late 90s, and realizing that I wasn't looked at as being Black, like my Black sisters and brothers, or down in Cape Town, where there were Black and brown, and to experience that, and to see it and have people tell you their stories. It's amazing at how it opens your perspective.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Now we have some questions that are targeted at some of your personal habits, like what podcasts are you listening to? What books are you reading? I can't say what films are you going to see because I don't think we're going out seeing films.
Yeah. I've been watching, like, so we have a museum here. I just saw like a webinar last week with Anna Duvernay, which was amazing, to talk about, social justice through film, etc. I tend to, my daughter's always there. I'm reading Americana with her.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah, I enjoy that. One of my favorite books is by Marian Wright Edelman, The Measure of Our Success.
Yes.
I have read that book so many times because it really talks, it's written in a sense of letters to her boys, but it really talks about what defines you as a person and how you think about life. So I read that a lot. In the little free time that I have, I enjoy Black art. So I've been reading a lot of books about collecting, as well as just exploring new artists in Africa and in Black artists. So that's just the person I'm working with is giving me some really interesting books to read about the art world. So kind of exercising my right brain a little bit, or my left brain a little bit. So,
well, since you're a fan of the arts, I'm going to send you the biography that I wrote of the Black artist Rome Reed Bearden.
I was reading that in your bio. I'd love to do that because I have a good friend that also collects, and so she's been educating me a little bit. But yeah, it's a little bit of hobby, and it's interesting. So I love Bill Gates. I love, I'm reading the biography of Susan Rice now. I tend to like biographies because I like learning about how people think and their journey.
Yeah.
Madeline Wright Edelman is one that, is one that I really enjoyed. So those are kind of things that I'm doing.
So, Marian Wright Edelman is a Spelman alumna.
Yes.
And we have often had her here at the college. We just named a scholarship in her name because she just retired from the Children's Defense Fund. But she had something that she would say that I absolutely loved. She said, service is the rent that you pay for the privilege of being here on earth.
Yep.
And how do you think of service?
I think that's a great quote, and I think it is giving back. And it's not, there's so many ways you can do that. There are financial ways, there's time. Like right now, every person can pick up the phone and call someone and ensure they're registered to vote. It's probably the most important thing we can do between now and November 3rd. Have a conversation with someone, but giving back. I love talking to students. As I said, one of the things that I'm doing now is really, having been a finance executive, I'm called on, okay, Robin, we can't find people that look like you. So I've made it a mission to get to know as many Black financial executives, East Coast, West Coast, Europe, I don't care. I was on the phone last week with 3 Black males that are, one's in Michigan, one's in Columbus, and one's somewhere down south. Just getting to know them, to think about opportunities or ways that I can support, and ensure that opportunities come their way. So I think everyone can figure out what they personally can do to make a difference. And there are so many different ways. I volunteer. I'm a member of the board of the Children's Hospital of Oakland. One of the things that hospital is known for is their sickle cell program, which ineffectively it impacts Black Americans. I lost 2 cousins from sickle cell, 20 plus years ago. And how do we build up that program? The lead clinician there is going to retire, and we need to get a scholarship in place so we can attract the best and brightest, right? So I've been working with some biopharmaceutical firms here and on the West Coast. How do we infuse money and support for that program to ensure that that institution stays number one? So I think the point is there's such a diversity of things. I mean, it's just back to my board of directors, being a friend, listening, just calling someone. There's so many times now, particularly, females that I mentor, I'll just call and check on how they're doing.
Oh, good.
It's tough going right now. So I think from the simplest thing you can do to helping a person on the street, or, sharing a gift of music. My daughter plays piano, sharing your gift of music with my mom on the phone since we can't see her, to whatever it is that you can do. It's just knowing that you don't exist in a vacuum.
Right.
We're part of an ecosystem, and what can you do to make that better?
Right. So we have another question before we wrap up. There's a lot of interest in how you first came to do board work, and questions about, is it necessary to be in the C-suite in order to be on a board, or can you do board work without having done that? How did you come to the attention of the boards of these very prominent companies?
Yeah, it's a great question. The big hurdle, as we all know, is how do you get on that first one? And I have to say, I joined my first board before I became a CFO, so I wasn't in the C-suite. But at PeopleSoft, we ended up in a horrible legal battle with another company, and it was called a hostile takeover. And so our CFO got consumed. I was the corporate controller, and I had to work directly with the board and the audit chair. And the audit chair acknowledged my work. It was an Egyptian gentleman. He goes, Robin, I'm on a board. We all look like me. We need some young folk. I'd love for you to join. So it was a small board in Beaverton, Oregon, Tektronix at the time. And he mentored me, and I joined the board. I got groomed to be the audit chair a year later. And it was actually very helpful in me getting my first CFO role. And it really helped me navigate the boardroom as a first-time CFO. So that was my first board experience. We talked about Mark Benioff. That was an interesting story, Salesforce, because I had actually interviewed for a role at Salesforce. I was telling you this earlier. And they wanted me to take the number 2 role when I wanted a CFO role. And I didn't take it. I said, no, I'm ready to do this. And we stayed in touch. He told me I was crazy, and I just I know what I want. I got my CFO role. He called and congratulated me when I got it. And, he would ask me about financial talent in the world. And about 15 years later, he said, I can't get you to come work for me, but would you join my board? So I think making those connections, the people around you that are on boards can be your best allies in getting on a board and telling people what you want. At some point in my career at Gilead, I said, look, I want to join a Fortune 500 board. I put it in my development plan. And I told my audit chair, and then I got a few calls, and I ended up on the Honeywell board.
Yeah. So here's a question from the audience. In light of Black Lives Matter, what actionable plans are companies like Google or Alphabet making to correct the issue besides putting out statements in support of the movement?
Yeah. So I know for 2 of my boards, they've made very public statements about hiring. And this is an issue. It has to do with a lot of the altruism that happens out here in the Valley. People hire people they know. And candidly, something that I think back to not being a victim, what can we do better? We need to fully embrace these STEM careers. We need to embrace, back to me, even though it's hard, we need to embrace them. But it's still no excuse, because there are a lot of people that have. So they're making a lot of concerted efforts to, one, be more sensitive to not only getting people in the companies, but their experience once they're in. I know retiring from Gilead, I had so many Black employees come up and say, I saw your picture on the website, and that was one of the final things that helped me join. So I've been very intentional. It can't just be entry level. We need to see Black and brown people that look at all levels of the company, including the C-suite. I'm optimistic. It is different this time, but we have to keep the pressure on. Back to some of the things I'm doing is there's no excuse. There's a group of Black directors that I'm working with right now. We've got a list of 100 plus names of qualified people that could be on board. So we have to use our voices as well and be very intentional. So I think there's a lot of different things, but I think companies have to be serious about it. They need to invest in the life cycle of, and support Black employees. And I, as a board director and others, we have to hold them accountable for it.
So I'm going to take this as the last question to you. What's up next after retirement?
Well, I've got my youngest is going through the college process now, and our goal had been, it's like, wow, I'm not, because I remember when my son did it, I'm on a phone or on a call trying to visit. I was really looking forward to this time of visiting. You know, in the COVID world, we're doing more of it online. But I'm doing my board work. I have not, I'm also a continuous learner. So I always want to, how do I continue to develop my skills? One of the things that I haven't done is taken a company public. So I've been working with venture and private equity companies to think about earlier stage companies and how do I take my corporate scale experience and apply it in that environment. And really just enjoying the journey and being open to the opportunities. I get the opportunity to advise and provide input on a lot of different things that are happening. And I'm enjoying being busy, but not tied to a schedule of a 24/7 C-suite job right now. So who knows? We'll see where that journey takes me next.
Well, we have certainly enjoyed talking to you today. Thank you so much for being our inaugural guest on Courageous Conversations, Black in the C-Suite. I want to say a special word of thanks also to UPS. They have been good friends of Spelman College for a very long time, so we're very grateful to them. Thank you for everybody who came and joined us and asked us all these terrific questions. I want to share with everybody that this is a continuous conversation, and we will be having more of these throughout the semester. We are so pleased that our trustee, Cynthia Jackson, CJ, we fondly call her, was able to join us as well and kick this off. So thank you very much, CJ. The next conversation will be on Thursday, November 19th at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And our special guest will be Shelley Archambault. Now, Shelley is someone whom I met not too long ago. Roz Brewer, the chair of Spelman College, and I had the pleasure to sit down and talk to Shelley. And I know you won't want to miss this. Shelley has written a new book called Unapologetically Ambitious. And it is a book in which she celebrates the value of being ambitious, the value of being ambitious, a Black person, a woman, and not being shy about it. She is also going to make sure that every single student at Spelman College gets a copy of her book. So before you come to that conversation, you will have the opportunity to read her book. So we'll hope you'll join us then. So now let me turn to Robin once again and say, Robin, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We know that you, even though you're retired, you still have a very busy schedule and a very dense schedule. So we appreciate that you were able to clear that time and spend some time with us today.
It's been an honor and a privilege. So I'm saddened that we couldn't do it in person, but I think this is a very important series, and I'd ask all the students to take full advantage of it and find the nuggets that inspire you to continue to excel. So.
Thank you. And we know that as soon as COVID is over, you're going to be our guest here on campus again. Because I think you did visit earlier this year, am I right?
Yeah, we did. We did. Yes, yes. I think it was like late fall we did, but yeah, we around Thanksgiving time. That's what it was. Yeah.
That's right, right. So we'd love to have you come back to campus again so we can talk to you in person. But until then, I'm going to say goodbye to everybody, or goodbye, I'll see you later. Be well, stay safe, and keep the faith.
Like that. Thank you. Bye, everyone.